2017 will go down as one of the best ever for the video game industry. Nintendo somehow fought its way back from the brink of potentially going third party. Well, I mean, let's be honest. Would Nintendo actually have started making games for Microsoft or Sony? Probably not, but those talks did dictate the conversation during the Wii U's life cycle. Regardless, it's a remarkable feat that the Switch has sold more units in 10 months than the Wii U did in its entire 5 years on the market. 2017 also brought with it tons of great new IP. We got Neo, Horizon Zero Dawn, Cuphead, PUBG, Mario Plus Rabbids, ARMS. Okay, maybe not ARMS, but still, I can't remember the last time that there were this many bombshells of great new IP. And with that, I'm going to jump into my top 3 favorite games of the year.
3 Persian invasions. 3 separate wars.
Number 3, Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, developed by Naughty Dog. Originally a piece of DLC for Uncharted 4, Uncharted: The Lost Legacy was turned into its own bite-sized adventure. It's not the full cake that we're used to with Uncharted games. The game follows Chloe Fraser, who is replacing Nathan Drake as the main protagonist. She was also in Uncharted 2. She is similar to Nate in a lot of ways. She likes to travel around the world in search of valuable treasures. She's a treasure hunter like him. She also throws a lot of witty banter at enemies who are shooting her in the face. That's something that Nate does constantly in the Uncharted games. The one major difference between Chloe and Nate is that when things start getting rough, Nate will stick it out, almost to an obsessive point, which they explored a lot in Uncharted 4, whereas Chloe is going to run. She's going to abandon the mission because she values her life more than she does with the treasure. I won't spoil the ending for you, but let's just say there is a character arc. Speaking of which, she is played by Claudia Black, who I think knocks it out of the park. And in my opinion, she should have won the Best Performer of the Year at the Game Awards. Now let's talk about the visuals, because it would be remiss if we just brushed past it. By now, it's 2018, and we as gamers are all spoiled with stunning graphics, but holy cow, these graphics are unreal. Naughty Dog deserves a ton of credit for what they get out of that engine. It's strange, it's like you forget how great Uncharted games look until you go back and play them, and then you can't believe how stupid you were for forgetting. The gameplay for Uncharted: The Lost Legacy follows the same formula that every other Uncharted game does. There's shooting, there's climbing, and then there's puzzle solving. The game copies a lot of the same elements from Uncharted 4, like the rope swing, the sliding, and Jeep winching, which can be somewhat of a critique because we've seen it all before in Uncharted 4. But at the same time, this was originally thought of as a DLC, so it kind of gets a pass for that. Something that was great, though, that they added, which now I'm wondering why this wasn't introduced earlier in the series, was the glowing bracelet that you can optionally get by completing a bunch of different puzzles. This bracelet changes the way that you search for treasures, because now as you're walking through the environments, the bracelet on Chloe's wrist will glow red, and it also emits sort of this frequency that you can hear. And it changes the entire dynamic of searching for treasures. Before, when I had played Uncharted games, I've beat them all, I've platinumed them all. I had to use a guide to find the treasures. There was no way I was going to waste hours of my life searching for these little sparkly glowy things. This bracelet, though, completely changes that, and it actually made me want to search for them organically. So, good job, Naughty Dog. The story is pretty good. I thought the beginning half was much stronger than the second half. My favorite part was when you meet the little girl who is running her dad's shop in the market. She's a blast. I really, really enjoyed that character. And I actually wish that she would have been your main companion throughout the entire game instead of Nadine. Because Nadine is Nadine. I mean, she's not fantastic. She never really grabbed me in Uncharted 4. This didn't really do much to move that scale either. I thought she was kind of a weak lead-ridden character and didn't fit into the narrative that well. The same could be said about the villain of this game. I can't even remember his name. He was kind of forgettable. He was just there to, push the plot forward with action and, a little bit of conflict here and there. But overall, the villain, he wasn't that great. The game is about Chloe and Nadine's relationship. Even more so, I think it's more about Chloe than anything, and that's where the game is the strongest. Overall, Uncharted: The Lost Legacy was a great game, and I know that it's been overlooked a little bit because of so many other amazing games that came out this year, but I think it will be looked back upon fondly.
The massacre was only the beginning.
Number 2, Horizon Zero Dawn, developed by Guerrilla Games. Robot dinosaurs. That's all I really need to say about Horizon. I mean, who doesn't get a little funny in the pants when they hear about robot frickin' dinosaurs? But seriously though, that was the main draw of the game for me when I first saw it, and I was definitely not disappointed. Guerrilla Games should be given a lot of credit here. After spending a decade making nothing but first-person, mediocre Killzone games, they did a complete 180 and put out the best game that they've ever made as a studio. And how did they do it? Well, they nailed the most important things about making video games. It's fun. Taking down one of those robot dinosaurs is as fun as it sounds. I love the gameplay loop of chipping away at enemies' weaknesses and then trying to figure out the best way to take them out. I found myself fighting random enemies for nothing more than the thrill of it, and that is a testament to how good the combat feels. Horizon Zero Dawn is also another beautiful game. The blending of the primitive art with technology and nature gives it a look like no other game before it. I mean, I've seen screen grabs that people have taken that can be hung on walls as artwork. You can't really say that about too many games. As far as the story and the characters go, I have to say I thought there was a lot to love. This is an open world RPG, so usually the narrative or the story is kind of the backdrop. It's not that important for a lot of games of that ilk. The narrative in Horizon, though, does a really good job of keeping you interested in what's happening on Earth, in this post-apocalyptic world. And as the mystery unfolds throughout the game, the ending is actually really satisfying. On the other hand, the main character, Aloy, is not my favorite. I think Ashley Birch does a really good job with what she has to work with, but her character is really one note throughout the entire game. I want a little bit more out of Aloy, and hopefully in the future games they'll do more with her. As far as the side characters goes, everyone is pretty much forgettable here, except for one person, and that is Aaron. He's an alcoholic you meet halfway through the game who is in search of his sister, who he believes is killed, and Aloy then decides to help search for her and find the people who supposedly murdered her. With Aaron, right off the bat, it's pretty obvious that he has interest in Aloy, but she is way too laser focused on her mission to even give him a thought. So basically then it turns into this one-sided crush throughout the game, and I really, really enjoyed it. And in the end, Aaron, he kind of comes across sweet the way he acts with Aloy, by saying, he was lucky to even have a minute of her time. So I thought that was pretty cool. I think that it can't be stressed enough, though, on how amazing it is that this game is the first game in a brand new franchise. It has no right to be as great as it is, and the devs over at Guerrilla Games proved how starved they were to work on a new IP. This is, for sure, the next big franchise for PlayStation.
That's weird. Where's the school?
Number 1, Persona 5, developed by Atlus. This game is incredible. Persona 5 is the follow-up to Persona 4, or the version that I played, Persona 4 Golden, which is arguably one of the best JRPGs of all time. That means there was a lot of pressure built up around the development of Persona 5, and somehow Atlus still delivered. I mean, they even surpassed Persona 4 in some ways, which I'll get into later. Now get ready, because I'm about to go into a deep dive into Persona 5. There are two things that stand out about Persona 5 when you first see it. Those are the style and the music. Persona 5 is by far the most stylish game ever made. End of statement. From the UI, to the victory screens, to the menus, the transitions, everything is paid attention to and given love. It just permeates throughout the entire game with a cool confidence. Like the devs knew how cool this game was when they were making it. And it's not just the style, it's the music. That funky 70s disco symphony of a soundtrack. It's so cool. I've had a Persona 5 dynamic theme on my PlayStation for like the entire year, and I have not gotten sick of hearing the same song. I don't know how Atlus and their sound department does it, but I just want them to keep doing it. Now, the Persona games as a series changes the story and characters between each game. In Persona 5, we play as a nameless protagonist who is forced to go to Tokyo and attend Shujin Academy after getting expelled. He encounters a drunk man who was harassing a woman, and late at night he decides to intervene, and somehow he ends up getting arrested. While attending Shujin Academy, I'm just going to call the main character what I called him when I played, Akira, to make this a little easier. Akira stays with Sojiro, who is sort of the family friend who gets paid to take you in for the year, and Akira ends up living in the attic of his coffee shop, Cafe LeBlanc. From there, you go to school, you make new friends, you take exams, you get a part-time job. It sounds weird, but basically it's a high school simulator. Now, what's different about Persona is that you discover a place called the Metaverse, where the distorted shadows of the real world manifest themselves and reside in palaces. As an example, a teacher at Shujin Academy named Kamoshida sexually abuses his students, and he also physically abuses his volleyball players. He's the coach. And he is such an evil person that there's a shadow of him that resides within the metaverse. Now, the shadow version of a person isn't the actual person. They're not really even that connected, but they are somewhat. So, what you do in the game is you dungeon crawl through the palaces with your friends until you defeat the boss. Then, the real version of the boss, so as an example, Kamoshida, he has a change of heart, and then he confesses all of his crimes. And that is basically the gameplay loop throughout the entire calendar year of the game. You investigate suspicious individuals throughout society, and then you defeat the shadows and get them to confess their crimes. So Persona 5 has a turn-based combat system. You use personas that have elemental bases, like electric or fire or ice. It's sort of similar to Pokemon if you want to think of it that way, but this is the best version of the combat we've seen in any Persona game. What's also really cool is there's this negotiation tactic, which is when you defeat enemies, they will fall down and they're exposed, and then you hold them up by gunpoint. And during that time, you can either get them to give you more money, or give you another item, or even join your party. It's pretty cool. The other highlights of the Persona games are the characters, and there are a lot of really good characters in this one. But the sad thing is, I can't say that I was in love with all of them. At least not in the same way that I was with Persona 4. So throughout the year, you can choose to hang out with some of these characters, and doing that can increase your social link, which helps you in combat in the dungeons. The thing is, I just didn't find the stories with these individual characters to be that engaging. And it actually made the relationships feel a lot more transactional. Like the only reason I was hanging out with these people was to get combat benefits, and not because I wanted to spend time with them. But even after saying all that, I still really love the rest of the characters. And everyone knows Makoto is the best girl. And then as for the overall story of the game, it starts off extremely strong. I was really impressed by how dark Atlus took it right from the start. And it might have been the heaviest content they've ever covered in the series, dealing with Kamoshida. Unfortunately, though, the game starts really high and then it really slopes down until the end. The last 15 hours are the exact opposite of the first. In the beginning, the scope is small, it's personal, it's grounded, and then later it kind of devolves into a mess where you're fighting gods and you're debating about the existential desires of society. I mean, Persona 3 and 4 sort of did that too, but 5 really, really stretched that out. And they feel like they fell into the weeds a little bit. And they also delved more into that for a lot longer time than they did in either of the other games. Persona 5 will go down as one of the best JRPGs of all time. It's going to be right up there with Final Fantasy VII or Chrono Trigger or Ni no Kuni. I mean, seriously, just go play it.